Hi, I'm Chris Levy, the technical partner at Aquila Super. And today I just briefly want to cover a very, very hot topic at the moment. The new Section 296 tax, or the super tax, as I've heard some people call it. And look, I'm a little bit surprised that I'm making this webinar, or this brief little sort of session, because to me, in terms of like what to do before 30th June, to me, I thought it was fairly straightforward or fairly obvious that, look, we don't have any legislation. There's lots of unknowns and, sit on your hands. But I've had so many accountants and trustees and others hit me up and want to talk to me about it. I've had lots of requests for lunches with various, trustees of lots of wealth. There's, I think maybe it's worthwhile just putting my thoughts down. And it has actually come to my attention. There is some, two subgroups of people that actually probably should have a think about things before 30 June. Like I said, my initial reaction was no one needs to do anything, just sit on your hands. But for these subgroups, there is actually, potentially some serious benefits in taking some action before 30 June. So, look, the first thing I wanted to just, first point to raise, of course, the unknowns. Like we don't know, what the final state of this legislation is going to be. Is it going to have a $3 million threshold? Is it going to be lower? Because, the Greens fairly adamant about that. We'll wait and see. Is the tax on the unrealised gains, is that still going to be in there? Because, the coalition, realising just how ugly this proposal is, has sort of said, well, look, ALP, come and talk to us, and we might look at mitigating that aspect of it. So I guess the thing is we really don't know, and some, it is conceivable that this legislation actually doesn't even go through. I think that'd be a very brave assumption. My personal feeling is yes, it will, although what the final outcome is, we don't know. Chalmers is very strongly pushing for the original model with, the $3 million, the unrealised tax. But the ALP and particularly the Prime Minister are copping an absolute shellacking at the moment because of the for a whole range of reasons, the unrealised, but also defined benefit, like these defined benefit pensions, how they're going to be caught. And it seems like Albany is going to have a special rule as compared to, say, the poor farmers and property owners. So look, it's very messy. So who knows what the final outcome is going to be? I guess, like I said, what that lends me to sort of think is, well, don't do anything. But then what's actually sort of come to my attention, and I'm talking to some accountants, is okay. So I guess the first subgroup that might want to think about things are where the nature of their investments are such that they might actually, if they delay, if they don't do something before 30 June, and by do something I mean, pull out some wealth, whether it's getting yourself under the 3 million, whether it's withdrawing or selling or transferring specific investments. It all sort of depends, but there are some types of investments that might see significant growth in the new year. And I guess best sort of illustrated through an example. This is an actual real life one where, these super fund members, they several years ago, many years ago, they invested in a kind of an invention type thing, and it was not related party, it was a widely held kind of thing, but they got in, some startup type situation, put a couple of $100,000 in, but the valuation on the last set of financials is now, I believe it's worth $6 million. It's a very successful invention that they've had. So it's $6 million, but it's all paper profits. It's all, there is some IPO happening at some point in the future, but right now it's still in that sort of R&D type stage, but they're doing these capital raises periodically. And what the accountant said to me is that sort of last year it's $6 million, but based on a very recent capital raise, and that might continue for 30 June 25. But there is some discussion from the investment management. They might do another capital raise in the year ended 30 June 26, or maybe a bit after, and that $6 million could go up to $8, $9, $10 million. And these SMSF members have no control over that. They have no control over, what the amount's going to be. I mean, hopefully it's it's a high figure, but it's going to come with a nasty tax bill, and they don't have any control as to what time that is. And so it's conceivable that if they do sit on their hands and don't do anything, this capital raise could pop out in, say August or September, and all of a sudden they've kind of, that investment has actually gone up in value because of that capital raise, almost instantaneusly. And by delaying, they're going to, they're going to cop this big tax in the 26 year. And so, what these investors have actually done is they've said, look, we can't take the risk of that happening, and have actually taken that particular investment out of the fund before 30 June 25. Just remove it from the equation. And there are other, it's not super common, but there are lots of, well, we do see instances, particularly in that sort of startup, joint venture, sort of the new Google type things, where you can see something like this happening. And yeah, those that if your client is in that sort of situation, they might want to sort of consider, at the very least, taking that investment out of super. The other subgroup, and again, this isn't really sort of surprising and sort of similar to the first group, are basically those SMSF members with huge balances. We're not talking $5-6 million of benefits, but 20 and 30, and to be honest, we've actually seen much bigger than that as well. And for those people, again, and I suspect most of them are harassing their accountants and their advisors, and actually trying to work out the strategy going forward based upon what we know and what we can expect to see from the final piece of legislation. So, for those two different subgroups of people, absolutely, it's going to be worth sitting down with the accountants, sitting down with the advisors, and just coming up with a strategy that may entail transferring investments or transferring a dollar amount outside of their SMSF before 30 June. So yeah, look, for everyone else, sit on your hands. And I guess one of the reasons why which lends itself to perhaps not doing anything, is that the correct path forward, once we get this legislation, is obviously going to be very dependent upon everyone's own circumstances. One client, they might have the same amount, but the outcome is very different. So this term gets overused, but basically it's going to be very bespoke. You have to sit there and work out not just what the members' sort of tax situation is like outside of super, but potentially what their family situation is like. There might be kids there on low tax thresholds. There may be the intention by the members, and we've seen a bit of this where there might be $1 million over the threshold, and they decide to go, well, look, you know what, we're going to give our children big chunks of money for house deposits or whatever. They're just bringing that forward. So yeah, look, I mean, so it's going, once this legislation comes through, I think it's going to be a case of, we accountants are going to be, there's going to be a tremendous amount of sitting down with clients and just sort of nutting out a strategy for each one. But before then, before 30 June, yeah, no, not really, except if you're part of those subgroups I talked about. Now, look, before I go, I do want to talk about another thing, and this has come up too. People are sort of saying to me, oh, look, should we go and get valuations for 30 June 25? And look, I think depending on when the last valuation was done, if it's property, you may very well have to get one at some stage, but there's no, I haven't seen a situation where there's been a pressing need that you have to get it done before 30 June. Whether it talks about a valuation of a property or a valuation of unlisted trusts and companies and startup things, private entities, they can be done after 30 June. They can be done when the accounts are made. So again, there's no pressing need to do anything before 30 June on that front. I will say though, on a sort of related matter, there has been some degree of correspondence in or media releases and discussions and things about the focus that the ATO are going to place on valuations, and as a consequence of that, the pressure they're going to put auditors under for these valuations. And I just want to back that up. I have to say, and I'm going to be talking about this, there's another webinar we're going to be doing about, for the new season, a much more extensive discussion, and included in that is this talk, have a talk about valuations. And to be blunt, we're still seeing a lot of accountants from some quite reputable firms just not getting over the line, sort of struggling to do a valuation that would meet the ATO requirements, particularly in the unlisted trust/company situation. There's sort of, I think the expression I've heard is good enough, sort of like a sort of a half-assed sort of, sort of very basic sort of model. And look, the ATO have actually sort of indicated through various ways that look, they won't accept these, really poor valuations, and they are, my sense is that the ATO are they're going to approach the valuations with a particular sort of zeal, and so I guess what I would say to accountants, is that when your clients are coming in and once 30 June rolls over, is to have a discussion with them about really tightening up the valuations, whether that be for properties, actually obtaining a detailed valuation, and I think that's going to be likely. But where it's unlisted trusts and companies, actually putting some time in and having some discussions with the client to really prepare something decent, as opposed to just sort of back of the envelope type thing. So anyway, fun and games for what, couple of weeks. The year ticks over. Like I said, we're going to be having a much more extensive discussion, a webinar thing to basically sort of new season. Some of the things for accountants to be aware of before they give the work papers across to the auditor. But until then, look, take care, and happy New Year. Okay, cheers.